Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Looks like you guys have really been digging into this Diddy stuff.
Yeah, lots to look at, for sure.
Lawsuits, articles, we've even got some people bringing up Epstein and Weinstein. So that's pretty heavy stuff, right? Sex trafficking, forced labor.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards.
And I know it can be kind of a lot to wrap your head around, so we're going to take a deep dive and see if we can't help sort it all out.
It is a lot.
What do you think? Is this just another celebrity scandal, or is there something bigger going on here?
Oh, it's definitely bigger. Could be a watershed moment for Hollywood. This could be about abuse of power, systemic complicity.
Yeah.
A whole lot more than just one celebrity's bad behavior.
Right. Okay, so let's start with the basics. We know Sean Diddy Combs, hip-hop mogul, right?
Right.
And he's facing some serious charges. But to really understand how we got here, I think we need to rewind a bit.
Back to the beginning.
Back to the beginning. Diddy was known for throwing these massive parties, like legendary parties, white parties they called them. Attracted the A-list, everybody who was anybody.
Everyone.
I mean, we even have Khloe Kardashian on record saying she was there. But these weren't your typical, Hollywood soirees.
Not at all.
Diddy himself is on video telling guests to send their kids home because the real party's about to start.
Oh, yeah. Send the kids home.
I saw that footage. A little creepy.
Definitely.
And it's these after parties, the, what they called them?
Freak-offs.
Freak-offs, right?
Yeah.
That are really at the center of a lot of these allegations. Things allegedly took a very dark turn.
Dark turn. That's where the allegations of what went on really get disturbing.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Diddy's ex, Cassie Ventura, filed a lawsuit, and she claims, she claims a lot of things. But one of the things she says is investigators found thousands of bottles of lubricant and baby oil.
Thousands.
I mean, what is going on here? She also alleges that Diddy would film these sessions, often involving male sex workers,
Right.
and then allegedly used those videos as some kind of leverage.
Oh, wow.
So we're talking about potential coercion, potential exploitation, and it just gets more complicated from there because then you have Lil Rod. He's got his own lawsuit going on, and he alleges that Diddy was actually grooming him for sexual exploitation by other big names in the industry.
Grooming. That's a specific term, by the way.
Yeah.
It means building trust with a victim, often someone young or vulnerable, to set them up for abuse later.
Right. And we're not just talking about vague accusations here. Lil Rod goes into graphic detail about an encounter he alleges he had with Cuba Gooding Jr. on Diddy's yacht.
Yeah.
And Jennifer Lopez's name is also in there. So now it's not just about Diddy anymore, right? We're talking about a whole network of potentially powerful people.
Potentially a whole network. That's what makes this so disturbing, right?
Yeah.
What if it's more than just one person's bad behavior?
Yeah. What if there's this culture of silence in Hollywood where this kind of stuff is just tolerated or worse, covered up?
Right.
It makes you wonder how deep this could go.
Okay, so we've got these allegations, and they're disturbing, to say the least, but then things get even more intense, right? Because Diddy's arrested.
Yeah.
And the prosecution comes out swinging. They're trying hard to keep him behind bars.
Arguing he's a flight risk.
Flight risk.
And they're accusing him of witness tampering, which, by the way, means trying to influence someone who might testify against you.
Right.
Could be threats, could be bribes, could even be trying to just discredit them.
Yeah.
It's a serious charge.
And on top of that, they bring in Diddy's past, his history of alleged violence. That surveillance video of him assaulting Cassie in that hotel hallway. It's rough.
Rough stuff.
Judge ultimately denied him bail, which is a big deal. I mean, their words were pretty strong.
No conditions could guarantee the safety of the community if he was released.
They also had former staff members making statements claiming they'd either witnessed or experienced Diddy's violence themselves.
So it's not just about sexual misconduct, right?
Well, yeah.
We're talking about physical violence, too.
Adding another layer to the whole thing.
And then you've got these comparisons to Epstein and Weinstein, right? They start to feel even more relevant when you see quotes in these documents like, everyone in Hollywood knew about all of it. And not only did they know about it, they all participated in it.
Wow.
I mean, that's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, that's a huge claim.
And then you have celebrities like Usher and Pink deleting social media posts. Megan Fox wipes her whole Instagram clean. It makes you wonder, are they trying to distance themselves? Worried about getting caught up in this whole mess?
It does make you wonder, doesn't it?
Right. It's like this wave of panic is going through Hollywood. Even if those deleted posts are totally unrelated, the fact that people are even making the connection
shows just how much attention this whole thing is getting.
Right. Everybody's waiting to see, like, who else might get pulled into this?
And it just feeds into that whole fascination with the dark side of fame.
Right, the underbelly of Hollywood. Okay. So we've got this massive web of allegations, potential cover-ups, tons of unanswered questions. Where do we even go from here?
Well, I think to get some clarity, we need to start with the actual charges.
Yeah.
What's the prosecution trying to prove?
Right.
And we also need to look at what Diddy's defense is. What are their arguments?
Yeah.
It's complicated, so we're going to have to take it step by step.
Okay. Sounds like we've got a lot more ground to cover then. All right, so we've established that Diddy is facing some incredibly serious charges. What does that actually mean? Like, in terms of the legal process, what are we talking about here?
Okay, well, we're still early on. I mean, Diddy's been arrested, but he hasn't been formally charged yet.
Okay.
So the prosecution is still building their case, gathering all their evidence.
So even though he's locked up right now, there's a chance he could be released before they even get to trial?
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, the prosecution, they have to convince a grand jury, show them that they have enough evidence to indict him.
Right.
If they can't do that, the charges could get dropped. He could walk.
Okay, so big grand jury decision coming up. What are they going to be looking for specifically? What kind of evidence are we talking about?
Well, for each charge, they need strong evidence. Right? For the sex trafficking, they have to show that Diddy was knowingly recruiting, harboring, transporting people.
Right.
Specifically for sexual exploitation.
Right.
It can't just be a hunch, you know.
Right. And what about the forced labor charges? What do they have to prove for those?
For that, they'd have to show coercion, threats, deception, something to prove that he forced people to work for him against their will.
Right, so this isn't going to be some open and shut case. I mean, there are people out there who believe Diddy is innocent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. From the get-go, his defense team has said he's innocent.
Okay.
They claim he's being targeted, that the allegations are completely false.
So there are two sides to every story, right? It's not just cut and dry here.
Right, and that's important. Diddy's presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
That's how our system works.
But, I mean, we do have some pretty compelling evidence against him, don't we? Just that surveillance video alone is hard to ignore.
True. That's pretty damning footage.
Right.
And the prosecution, they're also bringing up his past legal troubles, his history of violence, or alleged violence at least.
Yeah.
They're basically saying this isn't a one-off,
Yeah.
that this is a pattern of behavior.
Right. And it's not like it's just one person accusing him either.
Exactly. You've got multiple accusers, and they're all saying similar things.
Yeah.
That definitely strengthens the prosecution's case.
Yeah.
It's harder to dismiss when you've got multiple voices saying the same thing.
Okay, but how does the defense explain all of that? I mean, that's a lot to just brush off.
Well, they're saying the accusers have their own reasons for coming forward. Maybe they want money. Maybe they want revenge. They're also trying to discredit some of the witnesses, pointing out inconsistencies in their stories.
So it's he said, they said.
Pretty much. And at the end of the day, it's going to be up to a jury to decide who they believe.
But we're still a ways off from that, right? Didn't you say Diddy hasn't even been formally charged yet?
Right. So what happens between now and the trial?
Yeah.
Well, assuming the grand jury does indict him, there's a period called discovery.
Discovery.
Both sides, the prosecution and the defense, they share all their evidence with each other,
Okay.
get to prepare their arguments. That's where things could get really interesting.
How so?
We might actually get to see more of what the prosecution has on Diddy.
Right.
And we'll see how his defense plans to fight back.
Yeah.
We might even see more witnesses come forward,
Oh, wow.
or people changing their stories. Anything can happen. It's a fluid situation.
Okay, so about those celebrities who were named in Lil Rod's lawsuit, what happened there? Why did those charges get dropped?
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, it's one of the big mysteries of this whole case. The prosecution, they haven't said why, which has led to a lot of speculation, of course. Conspiracy theories flying around.
Oh yeah, like that whole thing about Joe Rogan having the inside scoop on arrest warrants for 7 other celebrities.
Right, right. But we have to be careful with rumors, you know?
Yeah.
It's easy for stuff to get blown way out of proportion, especially in a case like this where everyone's already on edge.
Right, but even if that specific rumor is bogus, the fact that it's out there says something, doesn't it?
It says a lot.
Like, people don't trust these powerful institutions. They're looking for answers, trying to connect the dots, even if they have to make stuff up to do it.
Right. It speaks to a real distrust of the system, of the people in charge.
And the fact that the prosecution is keeping everything so close to the vest doesn't help. I mean, they've hinted that this thing goes way deeper than just Diddy, but they're not saying much else.
No, they're not. Early on, they said they'd follow the evidence wherever it leads, and then silence.
Right. Like they're playing some kind of strategic game. But it leaves us hanging, right? With all these questions.
It does. It's like a puzzle where we only have a few pieces. And those missing pieces, those unanswered questions, that's what's really driving the public interest here.
Right. Everyone wants to know what happened at those parties. Who else was involved? Will this actually change things in Hollywood?
Exactly. People are hungry for answers.
Okay, so we've talked about the legal stuff, the evidence, the rumors, but what about the consequences here? I mean, what happens if Diddy is found guilty? What are we looking at?
Well, these charges are serious, right? Sex trafficking, forced labor, those carry heavy penalties. We could be talking years in prison.
Wow. So even though he's a celebrity with money, with connections, he could still end up doing hard time.
He could.
Nobody's above the law.
Nobody. Doesn't matter who you are or how much money you have. The justice system, at least in theory, should apply to everyone equally.
Right. What about the big picture? What about Hollywood? Could this whole thing actually force the industry to change?
It's possible. I mean, you're already seeing celebrities scrambling to distance themselves from Diddy.
Right.
Which tells me there's a growing awareness that this stuff isn't okay. People are worried about being associated with it.
Yeah, like everyone's nervous. They're wondering, is this just the beginning? Are more people going to come forward? Are more big names going to get dragged into this?
Right. Is this the tip of the iceberg? That's the big question.
Yeah. But I mean, we can't forget there are people who think Diddy's being unfairly targeted.
Of course.
And we have to listen to those voices too, right?
Absolutely. We can't just dismiss them. It's important to consider every perspective.
Yeah.
There are some who believe this is all part of a bigger trend. Trying to take down successful black men, particularly in entertainment.
Right.
They point to a history of systemic racism, of prejudice.
Right. And they say the media loves to jump on these stories, blow things out of proportion, focus on the scandalous stuff instead of the facts.
Yeah. There's definitely a need to be careful about how these stories are presented. We can't just blindly accept everything we read or hear. We have to be critical.
So where does that leave us? I mean, we've got these serious allegations, conflicting stories, a ton of stuff we just don't know. It's complicated.
It is. There's no easy answers here. And it's important to remember, in the middle of all of this, a man's life is on the line, his reputation is at stake. It's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal. This deep dive isn't over yet, so we really dug deep into these Diddy allegations, huh? It's wild.
Yeah, lots of twists and turns.
I mean, we started with those crazy parties, those white parties, and now we're talking about sex trafficking, forced labor, violence. It's a lot.
It is.
And then this whole idea that Hollywood might be complicit.
Right, like how much did people know, and did they just look the other way?
It's pretty heavy stuff. I think we need to step back for a second, look at the big picture. What does this all mean? Not just for Diddy, but for the whole industry.
Yeah, good point. What are the lasting consequences here? I mean, first and foremost, for Diddy himself, he's in a serious legal battle. If he's convicted, we could be talking real prison time. But even if he beats these charges, his reputation's taken a major hit.
I mean, yeah, even if he somehow walks away from this completely, these allegations are going to follow him.
Right, and the industry itself.
Yeah.
It can't just go back to business as usual. This could be a real turning point.
I mean, we're already seeing celebrities trying to distance themselves from him, right?
Yeah, which tells me people are getting nervous. This stuff is coming to light, and they don't want to be associated with it.
Right, everybody's wondering who knew what and when.
Yeah, and what did they do about it?
Yeah.
Did they enable this behavior? Did they cover it up? Those are the questions people are asking now.
You mentioned earlier that some people see this whole thing as an attack on successful black men.
Yeah, and it's a valid point. I mean, we can't talk about this without acknowledging the history of racism. Right?
Yeah.
Black men, especially in entertainment, have been targeted, demonized, throughout history. We can't forget that.
So we have to be careful, right? Hold individuals accountable, but also recognize the bigger picture.
Exactly. Nuance is important. There's a lot of layers here. This isn't just about Diddy, it's about power, societal norms, and how, frankly, as a culture, we often turn a blind eye to abuse and exploitation.
So what do we do? I mean, we're sitting here talking about it, but what can we actually do?
Well, first of all, stay informed. Read from reliable sources. Don't just believe everything you see on social media. Think critically about the information you're consuming.
Right. There's a lot of bad information out there, a lot of opinions disguised as facts.
Right. And we also need to listen to the victims. Their stories are what matters here. We need to believe them.
And what if somebody has information, something they think might be relevant to the case? What should they do?
Contact the authorities. Tell them what you know. The more information comes out, the better.
Okay. And beyond this specific case, what can we do to, fight against abuse and exploitation in Hollywood and everywhere?
Support organizations that are doing the work. We need to have honest conversations about power, about consent, and we need to create a culture where victims feel safe speaking out, a culture where abusers are held accountable for their actions.
It's like we're at a crossroads. This whole thing has exposed some ugly truths.
It has.
And now we have to figure out where we go from here.
What do we do with this information?
We've gone from Diddy's rise to fame to his potential downfall, looking at the allegations, the legal battles, this whole web of possible complicity. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And really, really disturbing.
It's a story that's not over yet.
Yeah.
And the ripple effects, they're going to be felt for a long time.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a question. What will you do with what you've learned? Will you just forget about it? Or will you actually do something? Will you be part of the solution? That's what we all need to be asking ourselves. This has been The Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a story that's gripping the world. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.